If I see her, what do I say that I'm doing here in the building?
Oh, you came to see me. I work in the building.
What do you do?
I'm an architect.
What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto, where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto, where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto, like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1799 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by retrofestive.ca, Canada's pop culture and Christmas store, Great Lakes Brewery. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Blue Sky Agency. Ask Doug Mills about how Silent delivers the space to focus, collaborate, and recharge. Nick Iones. He's the host of Building Toronto Skyline and Building Success, two podcasts you ought to listen to. Kindling. Go to shopkindling.ca for free 1-hour cannabis delivery. Recyclemyelectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home. Pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making his Toronto Mic's debut, it's Les Klein. It's a pleasure to see you again, Les.
Nice to see you, Mike.
We have to give some love to the man who brought us together. Do you know who I'm referring to here?
I'm going to assume it's Nick.
It's Nick. So, Nick Iones from Fusion Corp. Have you done any work with Nick yet?
Not directly, no.
We're going to fix that, right?
Well, of course, we know of each other, so I think the fate is already been confirmed.
Okay, because he's listening right now. He'll be very happy to see that. Nick was here this morning, actually.
Oh, cool.
We recorded with Tony Clement an episode of Building Success. People can find that in their podcast feed. But I want to thank Nick Iones for this connection because you were a guest on Nick's podcast, Building Toronto Skyline.
Yep.
And you did that one remotely. I think he's a bit jealous I got you in the basement for this one. What lured you here? Was it the lasagna you were going to receive from Palma Pasta, the beer from Great Lakes? How did I get you in the basement?
I always prefer face-to-face meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do I. So we're cut from that same cloth. But people can hear, if they want to hear like architecture talk and more like about building homes and stuff, the Nick Iones episode with Les Klein it's an episode of Building Toronto Skyline. Go check that out. But I was here, right where I am now, and I was listening to you chat with Nick Iones, Les, and then I heard a reference to 299 Queen Street West. And just hearing that address, it's like I perked up all of a sudden. I said, oh, wait, what does Les have to do with 299 Queen Street West? And then I reached out because we're going to go back and then we'll get to 299 Queen. But what was your role in the renovations, the redevelopment of this historic building, 299 Queen Street West, when Moses Znaimer and the Chum City Empire was making that their home? What was your role in all of that, Les?
Well, sorry.
No, you're all choked up because you're on Toronto Mic'd. This is a big deal for you.
That must be it. No, I was the architect for, my firm was the architect for that project. We worked on that building for over 25 years until Chum, essentially the Chum Empire, was sold to Bell Media.
Well, here's what I could do, Les. I can set you up to start talking about like what got you interested in architecture and then how you became an architect. I can run up right now. I can run up and get a glass of water. Do you want a glass of water?
If I can just try to clear my throat.
Step away there. Here, let me do this. I'll mute you for a few seconds. You get that voice in order because this is a deep dive. I need to hear Les Klein here. And I'm muting you now. And go ahead, clear that throat, go nuts, because I'm going to tell the listenership about a couple of partners that made this possible in addition to Nick Iones. I want to just say that recyclemyelectronics.ca has been a wonderful sponsor throughout 2025. And if you have old electronics, old cables, old devices, you don't throw that in the garbage to have those chemicals end up in our landfill. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca and put in your postal code and find out where you drop that off. Also, if you enjoy cannabis, perfectly legal now, Les. I'm going to unmute you now. But
Thank you.
if you enjoy cannabis, go to shopkindling.ca, and make your purchase. And in under an hour, it will be in your possession. It's delivered to you in under an hour. You can track the delivery like it's an Uber ride, and it's fully discreet. So shopkindling.ca is free 1 hour cannabis delivery. And thank you, Kindling. I'll give you the rest of the gifts later. But, even before we talk about architecture, am I remembering correctly from building Toronto Skyline that you, Les, are the son of Holocaust survivors?
I am, yes.
Would you mind sharing with me, what you learned from your parents? Any?
Whew.
I know it's a heavy one to start.
That's a heavy one to start with. I'll say that. I am a Jew. My parents were Jewish. My parents were both Hungarian. My dad for many generations, because he had to track it at one point to prove that he was in fact the proper Hungarian during the time of the rise of fascism and Nazism. And then the inevitable, as it appeared to be in World War II, happened, and the Nazis came to Hungary to clear the place of Jews. And my father, being of a certain age, was recruited, quote unquote, into labor brigades, which was basically forced labor. And my mother and her family were sent on train to a concentration camp. Stories that I don't really know the true reason for, but they did not end up at Auschwitz, as most Hungarian Jews ended up, and therefore into the gas chambers and the crematoria. They ended up in Bergen-Belsen, which was a concentration camp in Germany, where they spent the rest of the war until, luckily, they were liberated by the American army before the raging typhoid epidemic killed most of the people in the camp.
Oh my goodness gracious. I'm so, I know how difficult that must be to kind of start off talking about such horrific events in your family's history. But I think it's important that we don't forget these things.
It is, I've always said the Holocaust is at once a very, very specifically Jewish experience, and on the other hand, an extremely important human experience. What we do not learn from people's ability to dehumanize others can be repeated over and over again. And sadly, despite the motto of never again, we have seen it happen again and again. And why we stand up stand up against terrorism, stand up against that notion dehumanizing others for whatever purposes they choose is just wrong. It's a Jewish value, but it's also a human value.
Did your parents ever talk about this experience?
Initially, no. They did not speak to my sister and me about it until we became about high school age, and we started to ask questions, at which point they realized that it was, in fact, the wrong thing to do, to not talk about it. And they began to talk to us about it, and then more importantly, they began to volunteer to present to community groups, to churches, to high schools, to universities, to any kind of group that would want to listen, to tell them again about their very specific experience, but more importantly about the larger human lessons that need to be learned from that kind of horrible condition.
And your parents, did they emigrate to Canada?
No. Again, this is a long story, but
I have time if you do.
As many Hungarian Jews tried to do, at least, they returned to Hungary. Obviously, it was the language that they knew. It was the culture that they knew, sure, despite the hatreds and horrors that they saw. So they returned to Hungary, and it was not until 4 years later that my mother and father met and were married. And then, in the way of many Holocaust survivors, the idea of repopulating the people, I was born a year later. And at that point, my father had been ordained as a rabbi. So first in a very small community in the south of Hungary, and then a slightly larger community in the north of Hungary. And of course, when I say communities, these were shadows of the communities they were before the war, because they've been cleared, as the Germans like to say. But he became a rabbi, and he was active in the community and kind of like a traveling clergyman to all the little towns where there would be one or two Jewish families left. Anyway, in 6 years after that, 6 years after I was born, the Hungarian Revolution broke out. Okay. And most people don't know about that, but it was an uprising against communist rule in Hungary. There were several in that time frame. There was one in Poland, but the Hungarian was the largest. For about 3 weeks, the Hungarians managed to put into place a provisional government that was not directly communist. And then, unbelievably brutally, the Russians rolled in with their tanks and crushed the rebellion. But in that 3-week period, my mother, my sister, and I, with my mother's family, managed to escape Hungary and ended up in Vienna and ultimately in the United States. So we arrived in the United States on U.S. Thanksgiving Day in 1956. My dad, who was involved heavily with assisting people who wanted to leave and was in Budapest at the time, especially Jewish people who wanted to leave Hungary at that point, was captured by the Russians and sentenced to death for his role in the revolution. And through a series of coincidences and pure luck, managed to escape. And he ended up in Vienna to find out that we had gone to the United States, and he ended up coming to the United States and arriving on St. Valentine's Day, 1957. So these are two holidays that had no meaning to Hungarians, and certainly no meaning to Hungarian Jews, Thanksgiving and St. Valentine's Day. But right. To this day, those are two very important days in our family's history. So,
well, Les, we haven't even talked about architecture, and I know we're going to dive deep into 299 Queen Street West, but part of this is also getting to know you. And I think that backstory, that's tremendous. Your parents, surviving the Holocaust, then meeting, and then what happened in Hungary, and then ending up in the United States. So where in the United States are you all living at this point?
Well, we arrived to an army camp in New Jersey, but ultimately settled in New York City while we tried to find out what happened to my dad. And he came, and you really do have to understand, we knew not a word of English. We knew nothing of American culture other than what my parents and my aunts and uncles knew about, the Golden Land, where opportunities were enormous and there was freedom.
Right.
So as soon as my dad arrived, he set to work to get a job. I think he worked in a fur factory and a bunch of other things while he learned English, and tried to connect with the Jewish community in the U.S. And about a year after he arrived, he got his first job as an assistant rabbi in Springfield, Massachusetts. And after that, it was kind of every 2 or 3 years we moved to a different city, to where he tried to find a bigger congregation to better offer a better life to his family. Ultimately, we settled in Manchester, New Hampshire, which is a city about an hour north of Boston, where I lived through my high school. But my parents lived there for 45 years, and he was the rabbi in one of the synagogues there. And I went to high school, and then was very, very lucky to get into MIT, where I went originally to be a theoretical mathematician. I'd like to say that when I got to MIT, it was a humbling experience on a number of different levels. First of all, because every kid there was the smartest kid or the second smartest kid in their high school. Right. And I realized that I actually could be just class average in this group.
Right.
But more importantly, I realized that theoretical mathematicians were really, 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 really smart, maybe smarter than me. And more importantly, they didn't have quite as many social skills. So I actually had always had an interest in architecture in the back of my mind. I would draw things and I would read things. And I said, you know what? maybe I'm going to try architecture because it has to do with actually building stuff that you can touch and feel. But everything at MIT, whether you were studying architecture, mathematics, nuclear science, electrical engineering, was about problem solving. And that was a really, really important part of my education. That it wasn't that architecture was first and foremost an art.
Right.
It was rather that it was a process like any other problem-solving process. It's a tool for coming to a solution. And that, I mean, to this day, that is my approach to architecture. I think an architectural education gives people tools to manage complex processes, synthesize them, and create a solution, or in fact, several solutions to any problem. And we used to say at MIT that there are two kinds of solutions. One is the brute force solution, kind of crank through and carrying through. And then the other one is the elegant solution. You're always trying to find the elegant solution to a mathematical problem or whatever. I always thought what was really the lesson was that there was always more than one way to solve a problem.
Well, we need more problem solvers like you, Les, because we got a lot of problems.
Well, the world and life is problems, but I don't actually allow my staff to use the word problem. Oh. I call them issues or concerns.
Are they challenges?
Or challenges.
There you go.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly.
You're right. Words. Actually, my wife gave me a speech. She works for one of the big banks, and she gave this presentation on the language in the apps and how words matter. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, we had this chat last night, and she would agree with you. There's better words than problems.
Yeah.
These are challenges. These are opportunities.
Yeah.
It's
and
an opportunity.
Every opportunity is an opportunity to learn, which I think is really critical.
So when you pivoted to architecture there at MIT, how much of a role does Mike Brady from the Brady Bunch play? I'm just thinking, who's the only architect I ever saw on TV was Mike Brady. He'd be at that desk and he'd have, I don't know, a blueprint or something. He was the architect to go to.
When I went to my first, the answer is no.
Right.
When I went to my first architecture department meeting, and the chair of the department introduced the new members of the student body. He said, "If any of you are here because you read The Fountainhead, please leave." It ain't like that.
It ain't like that. And why do you think, again, you've got a couple of years on me, but and the next architect was the fake architect, George Costanza. I played that cold open up the top because George is several episodes of Seinfeld where George fakes that he's an architect. Why do you think George always wanted to present as an architect, even though he was absolutely not an architect?
Okay, this can touch a couple of different directions here,
Sure.
Mike. But
and then we'll get to the serious business.
First and foremost, I think in the popular culture, architects are kind of portrayed as kind of a little bit like thinkers, but they're warm and sensitive people, So I think that's why he thought it would attract ladies, and I won't argue with him whether that worked or not as a character.
Right.
But more importantly, I do think that architects have a particular approach to the way that we do our work, in that we have to listen to everybody. One of the things I used to say early on when we founded our practice was we have big ears, and listening is not, I would dare say, notwithstanding the world of podcasts, listening is more important than talking in terms of learning where it is you want to go.
Well, yes. It took me a long time to figure that out, though. And as I progress here, and we're in year 13, and you are episode, 1799? Better late than never to get Les Klein over here.
It was a great year, 1799.
Oh, yeah. You were just a kid. What do you remember about 1799? So thank you again to the almighty Nick Iones for bringing us together. But what I try to do now is listen, far more listening, give the guest room to breathe, and instead of just interjecting so often, I really do try to give the guest space to complete the thought and make sure they're completely. And that's actually partly why I prefer the in-person, because initially I think we could have done this earlier remotely, but I have difficulty gauging when my guest is finished with their thought when it's remotely. Like in person, I can read your body language and I can see your eyes, and it's a whole different kettle of fish here. But I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
What brings you to the Great White North?
I have my career, and I've said this to a number of people who've interviewed me. My career has been focused on incredible timing. So I managed to graduate with my very fancy Master of Architecture degree from a very fancy Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the middle of the 1974 recession. This was the recession that was brought on by the Arab oil embargo after the Yom Kippur War in Israel. And I looked around and said, oh my goodness, I can't find a job with my really amazing... I did find jobs, and within 8 months of having graduated, I'd been laid off twice due to lack of work by, reputable firms. And a friend of mine said, there's this place over here up north called Toronto. I hear there's some work for architects, and the Toronto's starting to grow. So why don't you look around? So I went to the library, which is where you did research, looked through a bunch of magazines, found a couple of architectural firms whose work I liked, who I thought would be interesting. Sent off a couple of letters, and within 2 weeks I was asked to come in for an interview. So I came to Toronto for a day and interviewed with 2 people, got 2 job offers.
Wow.
And
you batted 1,000.
It was pretty good. It was pretty shocking. In fact, there were 2 lovely interviews. I interviewed with the late Roger DeToy, and with A.J. Diamond, Jack Diamond's office. Wilfred Warland interviewed me, actually. And I was offered these 2 jobs, and Roger actually said, if you're interviewing with Jack, he's got more interesting work than me, take that one. Anyway, so I did. And I put all of my worldly belongings into the back of my baby blue Gremlin.
That's the one from Wayne's World, right?
Yeah. Once I got my papers from the Canadian government to be a landed immigrant. Here I was an immigrant again. And I moved lock, stock, and barrel to Toronto. I did not know a single person when I arrived. Wow. But it was an adventure. I was just absolutely open to it. I was excited. I met amazing, amazing people. Very quickly realized that Toronto was a place that had kind of a built-up energy about to bubble to the surface. And so I worked for Jack Diamond for 3 years. I became an associate. I worked on a number of great projects. And then at that point, having nothing and therefore nothing to lose, I decided to hang up a shingle, as they used to say, and start my own practice.
Is that Klein, Taylor, Goldsmith? Or
no, it was Leslie M. Klein, architect planner first.
Okay.
A year later, I had suddenly gotten a whole bunch of work, and I asked a friend, the guy I met my very first day starting at Jack's office, Hugh Taylor, to come and help work with me, and quickly he became a partner, so it was Klein and Taylor. And then a year later, we landed another big project, and we brought in another friend, Phil Goldsmith, and that became Klein Taylor Goldsmith, and ultimately Klein Taylor Goldsmith Limited. And we were at the so that was 8 years in. We were 12 people with 3 partners. We were getting interesting work. And another friend of mine who was a partner at another firm had recently decided to leave the practice of architecture and go into the development with his family. But he said to me, I have a great partner, and you guys should put your 2 firms together. You would be amazing. So the 4 of us, Klein, Taylor, Goldsmith, and Brian Kurtner, joined together and formed Quadrangle. It will be 40 years ago next year.
I was going to say, so when you arrived in Toronto, you had never been here before, right? When you had one day.
Never
and
been.
Then, so you're right. It's mid-70s, right? What are we in, like 74, 75?
This is 75, yeah.
Okay. Coincidentally, because I've only stolen 2 guests from Nick Ieni's in the history of Nick's podcast. And he has a couple of them. He's stolen way more from me, by the way. He had 20. Well, not Steve Pagan.
I'm not getting involved.
Don't get
you
involved.
guys sort that out.
We'll hug it out. But the only other guest I stole from Nick was a chap named Jack Mesley, who was an iron worker who was on top of the CN Tower when they completed it. And That was 75. So
I
when you
remember.
arrive here, we're wrapping up the tower.
I remember driving along the Gardner Expressway, going over the bump at the Humber Bridge, and seeing helicopters circling the top of the CN Tower, just finishing it off.
Yeah, what was the name of that? Olga. Olga, I think, was the name of the helicopter. They nicknamed the helicopter Olga, I believe. I'm just remembering my Jack Mesley chat. But it's funny that that's when you arrived, and you stuck around. So you pointed, you're still here. So
I'm
you
most
must have
certainly
liked
here.
what you saw here.
Well, I grew some roots pretty fast.
Yeah. So tell me just a little more about Quadrangle, which is a big deal. And I see you got a pin on you that says BDM because it's now BDM Quadrangle. BDP, Boogie Down Productions, right?
Well, building design partnership. But
yeah, my apologies. I'll fix that in post. BDP.
Close enough for jazz.
I have my readers on, but still couldn't remember that third letter here. But what did Quadrangle do? And then we're going to talk 299 Queen Street West. But what does Quadrangle do? What did they do? What was your specialty? What was going on there?
Wow. I'll try not to be too boring, but one of the initiatives, one of the reasons we pursued this idea of putting these two firms together was that we felt that our values are very similar, but our client base was completely different. So by that time, we were doing lots of housing and what we used to call radio and television for Moses Znaimer. Brian's firm was doing primarily office space and commercial. So we were thinking that with that kind of client base, if one was down and the other would be up, and we wouldn't be exposed to the boom and bust, which we'd already experienced once. So there was a 74 recession.
Diversifying your portfolio.
Exactly. So that was the initial initiative. But the other thing was that we really did believe in building a practice around long-term relationships. So we didn't fall in love with projects. We fell in love with our clients and what they could bring and how we could do it in such a way that we would be able to serve them and they would help support our growth. We did believe in growth. We thought the bigger pie allowed us to share more of it with more people, and that would be a great platform for future success. So that's the short version at the very beginning, and then. And
I'm going to let the listenership go. You weren't reading that. That was from the top of your head there. So it's succinct.
That's what I do. But the other thing that did happen is that we used to joke that we were the most overmanaged architectural firm in the world. Some architects are not known for being great business people. We were very proud of the fact that we ran a business, Brian and I in particular, because Hugh left the practice after a couple of years when it got to be 25 people, and it was a bit big for him. And Phil left about 10 years later because he really wanted to focus on heritage architecture, heritage restoration. And he formed an incredibly successful, to this day, incredibly well-respected firm called Goldsmith Borgel Architects. They are highly recognized as great restoration and heritage architects. But Brian and I were very focused on this idea that you could do great design and know business. So we got to know our clients and their business plans, and we always made sure that whatever we were designing actually addressed them. We used to say that we didn't have a style, we had style, so that we could adapt our designs to really reflect the identities of our clients and not us.
What a great segue, because you mentioned Moses Znaimer, and you said it was called radio and television is what you referred to it as. So before 1987, so we're going to talk 299 Queen Street West, obviously, but you already had a working relationship with Moses Znaimer?
Yes, I'd actually started doing little tiny bits and pieces of work for Moses while I was at Jack Diamond's office. And it was, move a partition here, set up a wall here. Can you put a glass wall here so I can shoot through this over there? And where I say there...
Can I guess? 299 Queen Street East. No, not sorry. 99
99 Queen Street
Oh,
East.
I knew this.
The Electric Circus. Yeah.
The Electric Circus. Yeah, absolutely. The
Yeah.
namesake.
Not the Electric Circus. Electric Circus. There was
Electric
no V.
Circus. So 99 Queen Street East is the headquarters of the Moses Empire at City TV. I did have on this program less than a month ago. I had on Jerry Grafstein.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Senator Grafstein.
Well, yeah,
To you.
until they forced him out, because I guess once you hit 65, I think they force you out. But I mean, he's in his 90s. He's 90, I believe. But he's as sharp as a tack. That guy put me to shame, that's for sure. But we just had a great chat about the founding of City TV, and there's only two founders left, Moses and Jerry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So
Phyllis-
you would do jobs for Moses at 99 Queen Street East.
little bits and pieces. I got to know him. And when I left and started my own practice, Jack very kindly said to me, you know what, this work is too small for us. Why don't you, with your brand new practice, take it? And so I continued to work with Moses. And then, I mean, we'll get to that.
We're setting the table, but yeah.
But when it came to pass that Chum bought City TV as part of their empire, and there was actually money to be had, they started looking at how to expand and where to expand. And they asked me initially to do a little feasibility study, like what are my needs for the next 5 years, and what are the needs for the next 10 years, assuming things continue to grow the way they did. We did an analysis. We told them about how much space they would need, how they could organize it. And they actually looked at a piece of land on River Street.
Hey, where the Humane Society is.
Next door.
Next door.
Yeah. And we were we were designing a building there, and then one day.
But doesn't Moses, isn't that where prior to the Zoomerplex, I suppose, Moses did have his office there, right?
He moved his office after the sale to the building at the northwest corner
because I
of
know
River and Queen.
FOTM, that means friend of Toronto Mike. You're now an FOTM, Les.
Oh,
so
cool.
There'll be gifts in a moment.
Are there pins?
Well, there's more better than pins. You're gonna get some food out of this. This is gonna be great. But shout out to Ziggy Lawrence, who I know was working there too.
Yeah. Well, I saw your list of guests, and there were a lot of very familiar names on that list.
Well, when Ziggy, she's visited a couple of times, I believe, but she always came with Joel Goldberg.
Yes, indeed, Joel,
a co-creator of Electric Circus.
Yeah, indeed.
The actual show.
The actual show. So yeah, I mean, we'll get to that, because ultimately the story of 299 Queen Street and City TV is about the kind of, I hate to use it because it's such a cliche, but the kind of family experience that we all had. We got to know each other really, really well because we worked like dogs and worked hard.
But this is what I'm asking. What I'm curious about is, what is your relation? Well, at this time, so prior to 1987, what was your relationship like with Moses? Was because the visionary meets the problem solver? Like it feels like a marriage made in heaven.
I like to think that I was a trusted advisor. He and his team would look to us to say, if we wanted to do this, what it would be like. We had begun to actually put, in that case, literally pencil to paper, about how a building could look, how a building could work. And from the very beginning, I mean, you have to really understand, I think, and I'm sure you've heard it from other people, but Moses thought differently about everything.
Yeah.
I mean, to some extent, I think it was always a budgetary issue. You know, you had to make do with far less. I mean, we'll get to that, but we used to joke that the construction cost to renovate 299 Queen Street West was the same as the cost of one of the studios at the CBC headquarters down the street.
That's the kind of
private money,
I'm looking for.
public money. Anyway,
well, it's fine. That chat we're gonna. I guess we'll get to 299 Queen Street now, but that was a big point. Jerry Grafstein is like, there was no money, and then when Chum buys in, and now there's some cash. Like now they can actually do things
but go back earlier. Go back earlier. Okay. Moses, Jerry,
Phyllis Switzer.
Phyllis, and I don't remember the.
I'll find this name. Absolutely, but yeah, I'll find the name while you chat us up.
But they came up with this idea of this rogue television station that would break all the rules and would get by
Edgar Cowan.
Edgar, right? Would get by on basically bravado, and they said to the CRTC, they said, you know what, give us whatever channel you want. We'll take the furthest channel all the way to the end of the UHF spectrum, but there's this stupid thing. Nobody cares about cable, but give us cable 7.
Right.
Nobody's going to watch it. Don't worry about it. It just happened to be right next to cable 6, which was the CBC.
Yeah, and then you get CTV at 8.
Exactly. So it was rather, forward looking and recognizing that was the future. But then you get to designing the building, and one of the first things Moses said to me was, "This is not a black box. This is not the TV stations in suburban Toronto or suburban Oklahoma City or suburban
like
anywhere else." Exactly. Who would mention such a thing? Where there's a black box and you don't know what's going on inside, and what you see on the TV is all made up stuff on a set.
Right.
He said, no. This is a building that will, and what I loved about it was he said, this is going to be the first television station where the building is part of the logo. It actually is the identity, and plunking it in the middle of the city, opening it up and creating a gateway to what that's like, created not only, again, much more economical, but also it created a magnet for the youth of the city that made them feel like City TV was their station, not their parents' station, their station. And the fact that they could visit it and, go up against the glass and look inside and watch breakfast television, or sometimes you don't have to push the glass because the glass doors opened onto Queen Street. You could watch from the street. Speaker's Corner, City TV News, everywhere. All of those things were about creating a different vision for what a television station is.
I mean, you always called it the environment, right? And I've had, as you saw on that list, I tracked down as many people who worked at 299 Queen as possible, and I pepper them with questions. Shout out to my dear friend Peter Gross, who I talked to just yesterday.
Wow.
So, when you can get, Peter Gross on the horn. Here, I'll call him right now. We'll get him over here. And also shout out to Lauren Honickman, all of them.
Oh, my
Ann
gosh.
Marskowski. The only one who's eluded me, Jojo Chinto. I was going to say politely declined, but it wasn't the most polite decline I've ever received. But he has not made a Toronto Mike debut, but I digress. So now that we're going to get into, how 299 Queen Street West was chosen to be the headquarters and what 299 Queen Street was. Like, I know it was a heritage building, but maybe a little context there. And then we're going to talk about how you were hired to fulfill Moses' vision for 299 Queen Street West. But let me right now just do the last partner mentions here and give you a few gifts. And then we could just roll with 299 Queen Street West for the rest of the way. So I have in my freezer upstairs, Les, I have a large frozen lasagna from Palma Pasta that you can take home with you.
That is very, very, very thoughtful.
It is delicious. I can vouch for
delicious, I'm
It's
sure.
delicious and thoughtful. And since I mentioned Palma Pasta, I'm going to invite you, Les, your family, your friends, and also everybody listening. So I'm inviting the world to Palma's Kitchen in Mississauga on November 29th at noon. That is the last Saturday of November. We are having TMLX 21. That's the 21st Toronto Mic listener experience. It's a live recording, so if you want to, you can pop on the mic and say happy holidays and check in. But regardless of whether you want to get on the mic or not, you will be eating for free. Palma Pasta will feed you at that event, delicious fresh pasta. And I will bring fresh, cold Great Lakes beer if you want to have a can or two, if you're over 19, of course. And Great Lakes Brewery has sent over some beer for you to take home, Les Klein.
Thank you.
You can take that back home with you. I hope to see Brad Jones from Ridley Funeral Home. He's a great supporter of this show. And Brad has a Measuring tape for you. What architect doesn't need a measuring tape? You never
Another
know.
one is you can never have too many measuring tapes. I will
You can
say
never
that.
have too many. So thank you to Ridley Funeral Home. And Retro Festive. This is exciting because if anyone listening goes to retrofestive.ca and uses the promo code FOTM, they'll save 10% right now. Like you can go do that right now. But Retro Festive is going to give a gift to the first 75 people who come to TMLX 21. And they sent over a different gift for you, Les. I have for you they're the Moose mug. So if you have ever seen, I don't know, have you ever seen National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation?
Of course.
Of course you have. What a silly question that is. But that is the Moose mug made
That's
famous in that movie.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for these amazing gifts. It's hard to imagine that Hanukkah is just around the corner.
So now you need 8 gifts. I know Ralph Benmergui was just here, and I was giving him the Moose mug, and he said only 7 more gifts to go for his.
Exactly. He and I think alike.
Oh, there's beer. Oh, it depends how old your recipient is. Okay, so Les Klein, less me, more you. Oh, less is more. Is that your slogan?
More or less.
More or less. And Les is Leslie, right? This is your given name.
Les is Leslie, but my given name was Laszlo.
So
And
it was Americanized when you.
It was Americanized by my first grade teacher who said, Laszlo, that's not an American name. You're Leslie now. And I went, okay.
You know, it's interesting because Moses would have hated that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, he'd still hate it. That's I just chatted with, and it hasn't even dropped in the feed yet, but Thalia Assuris left. Well, she was on City Pulse for a few years, and then she went to Global, and then she got recruited by ABC News, and then she went to CBS, and she became a big deal, and now she's retired in the States. But she was talking about her interview of Moses before she got the gig, because everybody had to meet Moses so he could bless every hire.
Right.
And Moses liked the fact that she was Greek, and Thalia tells me they didn't have a Greek person, and that this would be a great reflection of this multicultural city. So,
Right.
no changing the name, Les. It's well, you go by Les now. Okay,
I go by Les.
you're okay with it, but
But
please.
I don't go by Leslie. Only my mother ever called me Leslie, and it usually meant I was in trouble. So
Well, I'm not going to call you Les, yeah, and I won't call you late for your palma pasta dinner either.
thank you
So,
very much. That was my next line.
I'm stealing your. We're going to make a good duo here.
Yeah,
okay?
that's good.
We got to make Nick jealous. That's our goal here. So, 299 Queen Street West. What can you share with us about what was this building in 1987, and when did you start working on it? And since you're gonna kind of give us this background, and I'm gonna be quiet for a while, how did that site get chosen as the future home of the Chum Media empire?
Well, let me roll the tape back a little bit. Sorry. So we were in the midst of doing a number of different things. We were starting to work on that site on River Street. There was a proposal by the owners of 99 Queen Street to renovate the building and turn that into the headquarters. There was a little design competition. There were all kinds of other things going on, and I was really, I was anxious because all these other players were coming into play, and I said, all this work, and I might end up out on the street. Anyway, one day, Moses called me up and said, I want you to go to this.
Well, can you do an impression or no?
No. Called me and said, I need you to go and see this building that's being sold by Royal LePage. Meet the agent there and walk through it. Jerry McMaster was his name, actually, as I remember. And I went there, of course, rode my bicycle as I did in those days, and still do. But arrived at this building. I walked through the building, and I literally rode back to my office as fast as I could. Sat down at the typewriter and wrote Moses a one-line letter saying, "Dear Moses, you have found your new home." And it was an amazing building. So 299 Queen Street was built in the early 1900s, 1914, I think it was completed. It was built as the home of the Methodist Book Publishing Company, or the Wesley Building. And it was a publishing house. And therefore, it had a number of really interesting elements. One was printing presses are really heavy, and they make a lot of noise, and they shake the floors. So it was built unbelievably solidly. It had gigantically tall ceilings, perfect for equipment, hanging lights and hanging equipment and getting air conditioning where it needed to go. It had gigantic windows. It had personality. We both Moses and I fell in love with the gargoyles, and as you know, there is a gargoyle up there.
Yes.
So we really realized that the location was fantastic because Queen Street West. I mean, it was so uncool as to be painful. It was full of used furniture stores, used appliances, little bits and pieces of things you could buy to build something called computers. It was really,
that was just a fad.
It was really, really run down, but it was an amazing location because it was just down the street from City Hall. It was on a streetcar line. It was up the street, as we found out not too much later, up the street from the new rising, unbelievably expensive CBC headquarters. So we really loved this building, but we thought immediately that it could do all of the things that it needed to do. So what needed to be done? We needed to have a proper master control. Equipment room, equipment space for storage, space for all of the stuff that gathers. More importantly, it had elements that could open out onto the street. What were the key things that Moses wanted? He wanted a place for much music. We had built a $10,000 construction cost studio for much music at 99 Queen Street East. He wanted something that would be a little more interesting. He wanted a space that he could shoot that would be incredibly flexible, where he could shoot breakfast television and open the garage doors onto the street. He wanted a place for Speaker's Corner. Speaker's Corner was an essential element of what he wanted this station to be, so that the audience could express themselves freely. Kind of a foretelling of TikTok and whatever else. And of course, City TV News. He wanted a place where he could not only broadcast the news, but he could get wherever he needed to go quickly. There was a gigantic parking lot. And of course, part of the thing that we did, which everybody still knows, is doing that news van crashing through the wall of the east wall of the building facing Queen Street.
Of course.
So there were so many opportunities, but the building was gigantic also. So we figured that when we first moved in there, all of their requirements could be met by renovating the basement, the ground floor, and the second floor. And that meant that the tenants on the upper floors could stay for a while.
Okay, so hearing you describe this building, in knowing what happens, spoiler alert, it is perfect. It sounds absolutely. I mean, Steve Anthony has a place to throw a Christmas tree.
Yeah,
it sounds perfect.
So we've done a lot of renovations, what we call adaptive reuses of old buildings over the course of our career to date, and continue to do so. One of our most important rules is don't fight the building, work with the building. And if you went into a building and you said, yeah, it's pretty good, but we got to move this column, and we got to break through that wall, and we got to do this just kind of opened itself up to. It had a personality that was amazing and fitting, and it was a smashing success. So we started work on this in 1984. Before we were Quadrangle, we were Klein Taylor Goldsmith in those days.
When does Chum buy this building?
Well, they bought it in 84 or 83.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, obviously they have to buy it before you can work on it.
Yeah, that's kind of it's the way most things are done.
Okay, because Chum doesn't buy City TV until 85, I think.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
that's correct.
So this is all just coming together like it was like was scripted.
I think you could say that Chum said, if we're gonna own you, you better get a proper place.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't there, so I'm making that conversation up.
You need a new home here.
Yeah.
And these things like 299 Queen. When I think about the environment and the street, and then they'd have intermittent interactive and these different live musical events where people could collect, and the Much Music Video Awards and all this.
Of course.
It really was like looking back, it was such a huge part of the cultural fabric of this city. Was 299 Queen Street West.
That's exactly the phrase that I would use. It was part of the cultural fabric, and it allowed a new generation of people to identify with the medium of television as their own.
Well, it worked on me. Like, because I'm doing some math in my head to tell you I'm about like 11 or 12 years old or something when they moved from 99 Queen Street East to 299 Queen Street West.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason why I gravitate towards these people who worked at Much Music or City TV, because that's where I got my news. I watched Gord and Ann Muskowski, and I want Jim McKenney over here.
Yeah.
You know, I want Harold. I think the only podcast Harold Hussein has done in his entire life is this one. Somehow I found Harold, I talked to his daughter, and I got him to visit, and we talked about Harold,
fantastic.
Hurricane Harold.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So you know, it's unbelievable this happening. But could you elaborate a little bit on like obviously you mentioned a few there, like Speaker's Corner, and it had to, it has to be this and that. But so is it just Moses has a vision? And this is the sort of the mythology of Moses, is that he's like he has these visions and he can see the future, and this is what he wants, and you're just like, and this is how we can satisfy that desire. Like, is this where you fit into that whole thing? And then you just do it.
Well, one of the reasons our practice has been built on repeat clients is eventually you get to know your clients very, very well, and you can essentially speak shorthand. You can say, well, this is kind of like what we did over there, but we got to fix this and this and this. And you say, oh yeah, I understand. Let me show you 3 ways of getting there. That kind of conversation can only happen when there is deep, deep, deep collaboration. And we brought together not only our creative elements, but our technical. We learned from Ron Reed how to do a master control. And of course, since then, we've done them for Rogers, and we've done them for CBC, and we've done them for CBC in Montreal. So we know how to do those kinds of things, but we knew it because we learned it from the best. So talking about visionary, we talked about Channel 79, Cable 7.
Right.
But Moses also saw very early on that specialty channels were the wave of the future. Moses articulated to me very early on that he does not want to appeal to everyone. He very strongly believed that your success is based on very deep and very narrow loyalty versus mass, broad, mainstream appeal.
Like a niche appeal.
Absolutely.
That explains, like, well, let's have a station just for fashion television.
Exactly. Or let's get Bravo up here.
Right.
How many people watch Bravo? It doesn't matter, because the people who watch Bravo love Bravo, and will support it, and will support the sponsors, and will continue to support your growth. Book TV, sex TV, fashion TV, you name it. There was room in that building to grow those things, to give each of them their own identity. We should never forget FX. So these are audiences that adored what was being offered. And was cult. It was cult.
Space TV, I think it was called.
Space
right?
TV. Space TV.
So, if you're a Trekkie, this is where you live, and
exactly.
they're X% of people are Trekkies, but they dive deep into that world.
Yes.
They're rather fanatical.
And it taught me a lot about how you build a business. I want a few amazingly loyal clients that I can service. And service to the ends of the world because they're so good to me, but also because I know that I can help them achieve their goals. So that there are lessons there. Moses also taught me that people can remember only 3 things: news, movies, music. That's it. Don't try to give them 4, 5, 6, 7 things to remember.
Right.
Give them, snappy, clear information. The idea of the videographer.
Dominic Shulo.
He came up with this idea. Why do we need to have perfectly enclosed, soundproofed elements? Let's make the ambiance part of the story. Get the reporter not in a studio.
The city is the newsroom. I think Ed Conroy from Retro Ontario, who's works with Moses to this day, uses that line. The city is your newsroom.
Yeah. and walk over to the reporter's desk.
Well, you always got to be moving.
Yeah.
You always got to be moving, right?
Absolutely.
You don't sit behind a desk, and you got to have some kinetic energy going here.
Absolutely. So 299 Queen Street was a building that just served its purposes and for Moses' vision incredibly well. Over all of the course of those years, we ended up taking the entire rest of the building. Then we ran out of room and we had to go to 250 Richmond Street West. We built that the Jaffe bridge that connected the two buildings.
Right.
And there was only one shocking challenge that we had to deal with was when we were working on Bravo, which is the back of the building. You know where it was, in the to the back of Queen Street, facing onto Richmond. We had the idea was that there would be the rehearsal hall, that would be a performance space, and we had a column in the way. This column had a lot of buildings sitting on it, and we had to figure out how to get rid of this column in order to allow shooting there. We had an amazing structural engineer, Stanley Cooper, who no longer with us, but Cooper Consultants, had worked with us all of this time, and he looked at it and then looked at it and said, yeah, we can do this. And he designed the structure that basically took the column and split the loads to either side so we could have this clear view space. And I very clearly remember being in the building when we had built the entire structure and cut the column. And we said, okay, there's one of two things could happen here. Anyway, cut the building.
The faith you have to have, right?
And absolutely no movement. Well, as I like to say, in architecture and structural engineering, gravity is not a theory. It's the law. So they cut the column. Nothing moved. They removed the rest of the column, and the rest is history.
It's funny. You'll know Stanley Cooper believes in his work there if he's there.
He was there.
So that's your sign. Okay, well, he's here. So I forgot to carry the one. Well, we're in big trouble now. So going back for a moment here.
Sorry,
I love this, and I know I'm going to share with the audience that you have notes. You're not reading these notes, I noticed, but if there's anything on these notes we don't actually cover before we wrap up, I feel like we need you to drain that swamp, like whatever's on there. But let me just go back to 87 for a minute. So this reopening of 299 Queen Street West is May 1987. So a couple of questions, but one is, that must have been a heck of a party that Moses threw. Like, I know the Moses parties are I've had all these guys over, and the John Gallaghers and the Peter Grosses, they give me the straight goods on these parties. That must have been one heck of a party.
There was a party, but the day they threw the switch and moved everything from 99 to 299, that was a day where we held our breath and said, hope this works. Right. And it was seamless. It was amazing. But yeah, parties were, again, part of the culture. Yeah. Obviously, the MMVAs were a lot of fun because the city came out, the streets were closed and all of that. But for me, not me, but all of us who were involved, Ted Shore and Rob Dyson and a whole bunch of the team that had worked on all of those years, worked on those buildings. From my staff, we were always invited to the staff parties. And the staff parties were, as you know,
They're legendary.
They're legend, including the talent show, which was really something to remember every single year, if you could remember it.
Well, if you could remember it, you weren't there.
Yeah, well, they do say that. But it was all, again, it was not random. It was about building a culture of us. And to some extent, us against them, the underdog against the big guys, the gigantic syndicates, the gigantic corporations that ran the other stations. But it was also built on this idea of personality. Moses had a show that he did for many years called The Originals, and he was the original in my mind. Always has been, always will be. The fact that he put us on the map, and I say this absolutely clearly, until that time we were a little architectural firm doing some interesting stuff, but nothing that caught anybody's eye. But when we did City TV, suddenly Quadrangle was on the map.
Is when you look back at the ongoing history. Well, now you're BDP
Quadrangle.
Reading the.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that eventually.
Okay. So when you look back, does this remain a highlight? The work you did on 299 Queen Street West.
Absolutely. I mean, I
Tough to beat it, right?
do need to say that there is a tinge of sadness seeing what the building has become. Because
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, tell me what you think.
Well, I think the soul that was in that building has been removed. There's no speaker's corner. There's no opening windows. Everything is blocked up. It's really become essentially a black box in the city, in my mind. I certainly have not been invited back, but
well, the parties aren't as good now.
I'll take your word for it, but I wouldn't doubt it. But there was this unique culture of people, and you named some of the people. I probably name more.
You can name. I love the name checking, like because you obviously. I shouldn't say obviously. You tell me, but did you also consume the media, like on your television?
Oh, well, of course, but mostly because I loved seeing the cool spaces.
That's what I'm wondering. Like when you tune into City Pulse, okay, and Mark Daly, subdivisions, okay. Yeah. So Mark Daly is, I don't know, giving some news, City Pulse update or something like that. You must have some sense of pride, like just seeing that environment and
just it always brings back. It always brings back these cute little slogans we had, like 100 days to build a station. When we got CP24, I didn't build, but the contractors built to our design, CP24 in the middle of the newsroom while the newsroom was an active newsroom.
Wow.
I mean, the sheer madness of what that involved was crazy, and we were there all the time. And again, my team, Ted and Rob and others, spent a lot of time there, just checking everything all the time. And it was not flying by the seat of our pants. We knew exactly what we were doing. And by we, I mean us and the team at City TV. The technical guys were unparalleled. They really knew how to do things in a way that made sense. It wasn't like, no, we got to just throw more money at it. How can we do this cleverly, efficiently, and appropriately?
Because they couldn't throw money at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Necessity being the mother invention here. Were you invited to the Christmas parties where they would show the Speaker's Corner blooper reel?
Those were the ones. They were amazing.
A couple of those VHS tapes found their way to my basement here.
Oh, very impressive. Well,
the stuff they couldn't air, but geez, okay.
There was a lot of stuff they couldn't air.
Wow. So why do you think? And I don't know how much you can even say to this, but when Moses exits, and at some point there's a sale. Was it CTV? I get confused with these big companies.
It was CTV, but it was Bell Media.
Right. In fact, I wrote down the name. Yeah, CTV Globe Media, I think is what it was called at the time. And it morphed into Bell Media at some point, sure, of course. But I documented on my little blog, torontomike.com, that the pieces, the character pieces I loved being kind of stripped out piece by piece. Like, okay, no more Silverman helps, okay, whatever. No more Speaker's Corner, goodbye Ed the Sock, all these different parts. And it really did become just like another CTV or whatever, it lost a lot of that character that was so appealing in the first place.
I mean, appealing to us because we were involved and we were growing up with it. But the new owners have their own corporate image, and that's the image that they were working on. So right. Bravo Studio became a newsroom with fake brick behind,
Well, yeah, the more things change, the less they stay the same here. So we did, you talked about how the studio was alive, and you could see the people working in the background and all this cool vibe in the environment, as Moses would call it. And I realized when I was shouting out the partners, I did not shout out Blue Sky Agency, who have forged partnerships with established office furniture brands like Silent and Green Furniture Concept and Rouliard. And Doug Mills at Blue Sky Agency is eager to chat with any and all Toronto Mike listeners who are looking for dynamic and creative work environments. This ties in nicely to our chat today, actually. They have these privacy pods from Silent that Blue Sky Agency can hook you up with. And if you have any questions about any of this, Doug is easy to get a hold of. Just write him, doug@blueskyagency.ca. Let him know you're an FOTM, and he'll be happy to chat with you about dynamic and creative work environments, be it from Silent or Green Furniture Concept or Rouliard or whoever. So thank you to Blue Sky Agency. So there's the initial launch, and what date did I say? What date was that?
May of
87.
87.
Right.
Yeah.
How long did you work on it? 2 years or so? How long was that work before it could be?
That initial work, it was 3 years.
3 years. Okay. All right. And then would there be new ideas? Like as we proceed, like Moses and the gang there would have new ideas for new shows or new channels or new different things, and they would call you in and we need to modify this. We need a space for this. Like it was ongoing, I'm assuming?
It was indeed ongoing. But there was a broader strategy as well, because one of the great things about the City TV concept was that it could be exported. So at one point, and I think it was in the 90s,
right,
we began to work with one of the sub-organizations of Chum called Chum City International. And we started exporting, franchising essentially, the City TV concept to other locations. There was one in Helsinki, which I didn't work on, Jerky Music. I can't remember what it was called. Yerky Music. I think there was Mucha Musica in Buenos Aires. Maybe, I'm not sure if I'm getting those locations right, but we did in fact directly work with Moses and his team on City TV Bogota, which still exists today.
Wow.
Which was an amazing experience. We also did City TV Barcelona, which was also amazing. But the last time I was in Barcelona, I discovered that the location is now a yogurt shop, or was at that time a yogurt shop.
Right.
We tried to do one in Sao Paulo as well. And what we learned there was that obviously you needed the right partners, but that it was in fact transferable. This idea of creating an open environment where the city is your studio, where you engage a deeply, deeply loyal, but relatively narrow audience that is focused on what you're interested in providing. It was amazing. And we did the same thing across Canada because we established what we called the new networks, the new VI, the new VR,
right.
Barrie, London, Ottawa, Victoria, a couple of stations in Edmonton and Calgary. Those also became City TV light, I guess I would say. But they were all fundamentally the same. They had the same kind of approach to the audience, same kind of approach to news. Obviously, they were able to share a lot of the facilities and the support from the mothership at 299, but it was an exciting time.
Sounds wild. I just now remembered Dan O'Toole from Jay and Dan on TSN. He was telling about being at the opening of the City TV in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And another great Moses party.
Victoria.
Okay, and I know Monica Diol went there.
Yes. Yeah.
Speaking, do you know she's not the original host of Electric Circus? Michael Williams was the host.
Really?
Initially, yeah. And then Monica Diol. And then, Juliette Powell took over for Monica when she left to go out west. And we recently lost Juliette Powell at to meningitis in her 50s.
Oh, my gosh.
I had the honor of having her on the show, but my God, we lost her too soon. That was very sad.
For sure.
Jeremy Hopkin is the official historian of the Toronto Mike podcast. In fact, Jeremy and I, this is interesting. We're going to be recording live on Monday. So this coming Monday, in a few days, we'll be recording live from Casa Loma. Like an episode all about the history of Casa Loma.
Oh, that'll be fun.
We should turn that into a TV studio. We need your help, Les. Come on. But his question is, because when we talked about 299 Queen Street West, what was it before Chum bought it? Jeremy says, I'm wondering if Les can recall any prominent remnants of the Methodist Book and Publishing Company that might have been found inside when they revamped 299 Queen Street West. So other than the structure, was there anything left inside from the Methodist book and publishing company?
No. That use had long since ceased, and it was used essentially as an office building. So there were numerous organizations there that had found good and affordable downtown office space. But no, there was nothing of vestige of Methodist book publishing.
Okay, because he'd be asking if he could come get it from you. I know Jeremy collects a lot of this cool stuff. Oh, and Tyler, shout out to the VP of Sales. I think next Friday I'll be in Guelph to see FOTM Hawksley Workman. Can't wait for that, Tyler. You don't have to answer this one, but he says, very cool. When I told him you were coming on, he said, a question for Les. Will he hire my daughter as a co-op student?
We are always on the lookout for good talent.
Okay, Tyler, tell your daughter, now that I'm BFFs with Les Klein, I can introduce her to Les and make that happen. So tell us, on our way out here, you've been amazing. I love this very much. Quadrangle, we keep talking about it being BDP Quadrangle. What the heck does that mean? Did you merge? What happened? Are you're joining BDP? What happened?
So first I have to do to you what I've had to do with every single receptionist we ever had in the office.
Oh, I'm saying it wrong.
It's not quadrangle.
Okay, say it again.
It's not triangle. It's triangle, and therefore it's quadrangle.
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 Wrangle. You know, that's difficult for my, I can barely say brewery.
I recognize it's not easy.
Why did you name it that?
Well, we were one of the first firms in Ontario to have what the Ontario Association of Architects called an anonymous name. Because until that time, you had to name the firm after yourselves. And it was when the four of us formed the firm, we really wanted to send a message that this was not about us, it was about the firm. And we wanted to express something that would say that. So obviously we had four partners, Quadrangle, but Quadrangle is also a form that's created by buildings. And more importantly, you find quadrangles in places like universities where ideas are exchanged, where things are learned and taught, and where there's an opportunity for continuous learning.
Okay, Quadrangle.
Mm-hmm.
I'll work
Very
on
good,
that.
much better.
Okay, good.
So then we also, I joked earlier that we were this hopelessly overmanaged architectural firm, but one of the things that we did in our annual management retreats was we would create strategic plans. And in the mid 2010s, we created a plan that we wanted to pursue, which was to expand geographically, to expand the number of sectors that we worked in, and to really create new opportunities for our staff to work on interesting, cool projects. Just as we were thinking about how we were going to implement that, we had a knock on our door, on our figurative door, from BDP. And BDP is the second largest architecture and engineering firm in the UK. We are the architects for the retail component of the Well, the new development at Front and Spadina, where our new offices are, which is really cool. So you should come down and visit.
Very cool space.
But as they were coming to work on that project, they said, wow, we really should have an office in Toronto. They found us. We decided that we liked each other quite a bit and that we could get along. And we made a deal and joined BDP in 2019. And we rebranded as BDP Quadrangle because our Quadrangle brand was extremely strong and we wanted to maintain that connection with our community.
And you got that cool pin you're wearing.
It's all
part of the deal?
It's all about the pins. It's all about the pins.
It's all about the pin.
We've always had pins.
Well, that's amazing. But Moses, of course, didn't rest on his laurels. He built up Zoomer, and there's a lot going on there, including Blog TO, and you got Zoomer, and there's a radio, and a whole bunch of stuff going on.
And don't forget the Moses Neimer Television Museum.
How could I forget? I've seen it, and then and of course he's doing good work with people like Joel Goldberg. Still, I know he's still working there, and of course Ed Conroy.
Well, we did do the design for the Zoomerplex.
That's where I'm going, because just to tie it back to Jerry Grafstein, he creates a YTV anyway. So this is the old This is the old YTV studio in Liberty Village. Yep. So I was going to ask gently if you were involved in when it became the Zoomerplex.
In fact, we were. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't want to ask that question and find out Moses went to a different place because Moses likes working with you. But is there anything that didn't come up organically or didn't prompt for that on that piece of paper, Les?
Well, I just wanted to do a shout out to
Do as many as you want.
to my partner Ted Shore, because Ted is now retired from BDP Quadrangle because he's decided to rest on his laurels, do other cool things. But he's still working with us on new interesting media environment projects. But he was really the heart and soul of the work that we did for Moses all those years.
Okay, I'm glad you shouted him out. And I think I need help in this TMDS this studio you're in right now could use a little love.
Well, maybe raising the ceiling would be a good idea.
Okay, what's that going to set me back? That would probably cost more than whatever that $10,000 you spent way back in the day on. I would cost more to do that. But
Sadly, you're right.
love this very much. Love what you're doing there. Thank you to Nick Iones for introducing us, and I'm glad.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
What's next for 299 Queen Street West? Is this some kind of a transit hub, or what was? I can't remember what where we're at with that. You don't know. But,
No idea.
But when you drive past it, or bike past it, or walk past it, are you flooded with memories of when you?
It never fails to move me, and I'm not exaggerating.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,799th show. You were so close to the big... It's a PD day, so I got the 11-year-old running around upstairs. You were so close to episode 1800. Maybe you need to come back on... that'll be Casa Loma. That's actually kind of neat. The Casa Loma episode with Jeremy Hopkin. We're recording live from Casa Loma, all about Casa Loma. That'll be episode 1800. But this is 1,799th show. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. And much love to all who made this possible. Again, that's Retro Festive. You got your Moose Mug. Great Lakes Brewery. You got your fresh craft beer. Palma Pasta. Don't leave without your lasagna. It's in my freezer. Nick Iones. Thank you, Nick. You're going to do some great business with my friend Les Klein here. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Blue Sky Agency. Right, Doug? He can hook you up with a silent pod. And Ridley Funeral Home. See you all Monday again. Jeremy and I, live from Casa Loma. We'll see you then.